Gene Smith to you today. He was born in Marks, Mississippi in 1935, and he grew up in Tunica. He graduated from Mississippi State University in 1956, and he was in the Air Force ROTC, and he went right into the Air Force, and on his 33rd mission over North Vietnam, he was shot down and became a prisoner in what became known as the Hanoi Hilton. And he was there for 5 years, 5.5 years, he'll correct me in a minute. Anyway, when he was released in 1973, he came home and he went to flight training school, and he was a flight trainer. He was the assistant and then the director of the 50th Flight Training School in Columbus, Mississippi at the Columbus Air Force Base. The pavilion there in Columbus is named after Lieutenant Colonel Gene Smith. He plays a mean game of golf at 86, and he has a great sense of humor. And let me introduce to you Lieutenant Colonel Gene Smith.
Well, I don't know about a mean game of golf, but I'm getting a little more mature each and every day. Oh, can you hear me? Can everybody hear me? All right.
Now we can.
I'm getting more mature, read old. Between that, and it's getting harder and harder and harder to hit the golf ball more than about 150 yards. I want to ask you something. When you did the pledge a few minutes ago, just 5 minutes ago, what did you think about when you did the pledge to the flag? What did you think about? I never do the pledge that 2 or 3 things don't come to my mind. One is those Marines putting the flag on top of Mount Suribachi. Neil Armstrong putting the flag on the moon. Seeing a guy named Mike Christian. I didn't actually see him, but I was in the same area in the prison. Build a little bitty flag out of some silver and kind of a reddish threads of some pajamas that the V had given us as part of our clothes, and he made a little American flag out of it. They found it in his stuff on one of the inspections that they did, and they took him out and tortured him for about 4 or 5 days, threw him back in the cell, took that flag away, and within a day, he was working on another flag. That's what I think about when I do the pledge, each and every time. So I encourage you that don't just say, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Think of what that responsibility is that you have when you make that pledge to the flag. When Annie asked me to do this is not the first time I've been here, but I don't remember exactly when, mature, read old. Those things, the hard drive is getting a couple of nicks in it, and I absolutely have run out of RAM. So I can't tell you exactly when that was, but I do remember that one of the guys that came down here, were 2 that did a very important part of my life. One of them's not here with us anymore. One of them was Houston Hardy, that I bet you a lot of people in here know. And the other one was John Chancellor. John was an Air Force guy, flew RF-4s in Vietnam circa 1972. And I remember him introducing me, and you're going to have to pardon me just a minute. When he got up and introduced me, and he went through a little stuff, and he said, this guy is a fighter pilot. And says, fighter pilots, when they are flying in that environment that we were in Southeast Asia, we had a lot of missions that we went on, and the odds of coming back was somebody was going to get shot down. But as a fighter pilot, John says, you had to have the mentality that you looked around at that group that you were fixing to go fly with, and you would say, one of them son of bitches is going to get shot out, but it ain't going to be me. That's what the man said. You know, when Annie asked me to do this, I'm like I've said, I'm getting a little mature, and I said, what would be a worth to you? What I'm going to do is very quickly try to go through a little bit of my shoot down and my incarceration and what it did to me during those many, many long years over there. Can you get a picture of your life when you were about, when you were about 32 or 3, and then chop out 5.5 years? What did you do then? What'd you do during those years? What'd you do the 5 years before that? I went to Southeast Asia. I was 32. Been in the Air Force a long time, both at the back seater and the front seater too. And by the way, Annie, I was, when I got back, and was at the 50th Flying Training Squadron. There were 3 squadrons there at Columbus, and they let me be the ops officer, and they let me have trained the kids, and I just loved them. And I wound up being the squadron commander of that thing, so that's just for the record. But at any rate, when I went to Southeast Asia, I went over there because my country asked me to do this. I didn't volunteer, but I was about to volunteer. And I wanted to volunteer in F-4s, but I wound up with an F-105 assignment, which I didn't want to fly. But it turned out it was one of the best airplanes that we had over there. And I got there in 1967, in about August. I got one mission just to kind of show us the type formation that we were going to be flying, going 400 miles north, and what that formation looked like. And then my next mission was combat, where they shot at you. And I never had that done to me before. But it was in the lower route packs of, you know how Vietnam was kind of divided up? There was 6 route packs, areas. Route pack 1 through 5 was really 1 through 4 was down in the lower part of the country. And then 5 and more, especially 6, was up where all the guns were by the time I got there. That was a beautiful strategy that McNamara and Johnson, those idiots, had done managing that thing. So I got 5 missions down there where they just shot at you a little bit. But I will tell you, one of the guys in my class, named Bill Bennett, who had 3,000 or 4,000 hours of jet time, on his third mission in South Vietnam, he was number 4 and had some captain lead him. And I always had a lot of problem with what that captain did. They made 3 passes on a suspected truck park, which was stupid, stupid, stupid. And on that last pass, Bill Bennett didn't pull out. He had 4,000 hours of jet time, and he didn't come out. Was it a golden BB or what? Stupid, stupid, stupid. But at any rate, I flew 5 missions down there, and then my next mission, I got to go to Pac 6, where all the guns were. And we had a couple of routes that we went. One was up over the Laos, which was about a 3-hour and 45-minute going and coming. We would refuel going both ways. And the other one was out, we'd fly over South Vietnam, go out over the Gulf of Tonkin, and refuel and come into the Pac 6 up in that direction. And I was number 2 in a flight of 4 F-105s, and there were 4 flights of those in our force of 16 airplanes. So you can imagine my heart was racing pretty much after we dropped off the tanker and started in toward where the bad guys were north of. Anybody recognize the name Haiphong,
Yes.
Hangay, Bac Giang, Bac Ninh. Those were all, two of them were ports. Haiphong was one of the biggest ports they had. We flew by that with our 16 ships going, how fast did I tell you, Brian? 560 knots ground. That's how fast we went, and that's pretty fast. And we got closer and closer to the target. Target was only 40 miles off the coast. And we're spread out in a big, like the B-17s you saw in World War II. And I'm the number 2 guy, the closest to where all the guns would be coming in this big thing. And so as we got closer and closer and closer to that target, my heart is beating faster and faster and faster. And we had a flight of what we call weasels that were our ECM SAM suppressors out there between us and really Hanoi, because Hanoi was only about 15 miles. And they kept calling SAMs that were looking at us and no threat to the force, SAM's 3-ringer, no threat to the force. And about that time, a SAM came between me and my lead, so close I could read the Russian writing on it. And it scared the snot out of me, among other things. And the thing went up, and so it blew up. And I looked, and there was another coming right up with it, blew up on the thing. And about that time, we got the signal to roll in where we got in an echelon formation, 50 feet apart, 4 airplanes, 4 more airplanes, and then we rolled in. Just as we rolled in, an airplane in front of me, in the flight in front of me, got hit. And this guy was black with flak. Got hit, and he just torched. And we rolled in, going 550, 60 knots. And that guy burned all the way to the ground, and we pickled and we pulled off and never heard a beeper, never saw him eject or anything, and then we came out. That guy came out on the same airplane with me, some 5.5 years later. He was actually captured by the Chinese in that area. I just found that out about 3 or 4 months ago. And he got shot in the back of the head by the Chinese for some reason or another, and one of my good friends had said he was just a hard-headed Mormon. But his name was Jay Hess, and great story. So when I got back out to the Gulf, I sucked all my water out of my bottle in the airplane, and I smoked a cigarette. Yep, we smoked in those airplanes, and when you weren't real busy. And I said, crap. I've got 94 more of these things to do, because you had 100 missions to do with this. So that was my introduction to flying really combat in Vietnam. I would fly 32 and a half of those missions. I became a flight lead on about my 8th or 9th mission up there. And so it became a challenge each and every day that you went north. With that group of men, and we had 16 airplanes, 4 flights of 4, in every one of the forces. And we lost people. We would go. It kind of was. You wouldn't do it all and have 4 missions where you would kill somebody, but then you would get a run going where you would lose several people within a 2 or 3 day time. I flew, like I said, 33 until I got shot down. And that was October the 25th of 1967, my oldest daughter's 8th birthday. I have talked to her many times over the years. I said, how was your birthday that day? And it was not too good. Well, my shoot down, the target was the Doma Bridge, which was downtown Hanoi. And that was the most heavily defended target in the history of aerial warfare, so they say. And I can believe that too, because I was the flight lead for the 4th flight of 4 F-105s. And as we got close to that city, it's Sky was black and white, and a few missiles came up. Didn't have any MiGs because the MiGs wouldn't come into the area that we were bombing, obviously. And when I pulled out of the bottom of the dive on that bridge, leading my flight of 3 other guys, as I pulled out, my airplane got hit. And I felt it get hit. It felt like you had your head in a wash tub, then bam, it did. And I said, oh shit, I just got hit. And nothing happened for about 2 or 3 seconds, and then the airplane tumbled. Now I was going probably 600 knots, so you can do some math there. And I was pulling about 4 Gs, and I later found out from my members of my flight that you got hit, and when that airplane pitched up, you just tumbled, and we were right by it. And they weren't going to stay around to see what happened to me. You get out of Dodge as fast as you can. Well, I was able to get out of the airplane barely. I couldn't get my hands to the ejection seat handle because of so many positive and negative G-forces in the airplane. I've told John and Brian these stories, but finally I reached down and got my G-suit with my right hand and got the handle and pulled it, and I went, punched out, everything worked automatically. Got me out of the seat, chute open, and I'm floating down over the city of Hanoi. And I pretty much knew there was not going to be a lot of happy people down there when I hit the ground, and I could actually see, I say 1 million, but probably 3,000 or 4,000 literally people coming to the area that I was going to hit and run on the edge of Hanoi. And I smoked a cigarette. And why I did that, I have no idea. And did a 4-line cut on the parachute to help me steer it, and why the hell I needed to do that, I hadn't figured that out either. But what I did not do, and I was very fortunate, we had a survival kit that was strapped to your parachute, and I forgot to deploy that, which I should have, because I hit on that, and my back, I'm still paying the price on that of not deploying that survival kit. But when I hit ground and hit my quick releases, there was a Vietnamese running toward me, and he had an AK-47, and he ripped a burst through me. 2 bullets went through my left leg and came out the other side. Didn't hit the femoral artery, didn't hit a bone. And that's the only reason that I'm here today, is he could have hit the bone, because more than one guy broke that femur ejecting from the airplane. But if you hit the femoral artery, you're dead, because you will bleed out. And I had a pretty good sized chunk in the other too. Then they undressed me, wired my hands together, actually like that, and gave the little short piece of, not rope, but it was smaller than that, and gave me to a little Vietnamese girl, and off we went to the prison with people beating you and whatever. And the next thing that I do remember was being in a small building, probably 30 minutes after I got shot down, with a couple of guards. And a guy offered me a cigarette, and I turned it down. And then it's getting close to dark, probably 5:30, because our target TOT was 4:30, 16:30. And offered me a cigarette, and then got me in a truck with an old sergeant. And this is another very funny part of the story. Gave me an old sergeant and a young recruit-looking kid. And the kid had a, am I doing something wrong? Brian, was that your? I'm kidding. But at any rate, that little guard had a pistol he was messing with, and running a slide back and forth. And we were now in downtown Hanoi, and it was getting close to dark. It was probably 5:30 or so, and that gun went off inside that truck from that recruit. And that old sergeant is sitting next to him, and my foot's next to the sergeant. And it missed my foot about this far, and it missed that sergeant's foot about this far. Well, the sergeant took the gun away from the kid and admonished him, I guess it was, in Vietnamese. But the kid dropped his head, and I said, holy smokes, I hope I don't see him later on. So at any rate, then I'm off to the starting the question and answer period, which I did for, I don't know, 6 or 7 days. I never did get that nailed down. And you've all read about the stuff that was done. It's the same thing. It was brutal. And the hardest thing for me to get over during that part of it, you were supposed to give only name, rank, serial number, and date of birth. And then you weren't supposed to give them anything else. Well, that is, again, bovine scatology, because I can make you tell me anything I want you. You will tell me something, and it won't take but about 3 minutes. And I promise you, you will tell me something. I don't care how tough you are. But I went through that question and answer, and they never asked really a question that was of vital military information. How many people were in your flight? It was about 18 of us when we started. Well, it really wasn't, it was 4. But it was 16 in the force. Who were the people in your flight? Well, after I figured out I was going to tell them something, I made up a list of names that I could remember. Look at here, Mike. I'm just kidding. But anyway, I made up a list of names that I could remember. You know, who was your squadron commander? My squadron commander was Bart Starr. Actually, Bart and I had roomed together at summer camp, and so Bart was an old good friend and everything. But anyway, we made it through that, and I spent about 7 days being tied up in knots and checking parts of my anatomy I'd never seen before, and I got hung from the ceiling a time or two, not long, but enough to where it messes your shoulders up pretty much. And it was just that kind of information, never any vital intelligence that what's your target for the next day. Well, we didn't know what the target was. We were given those usually that night before, or so spent a lot of time with that. Then I was taken out of that one room that I'd gotten to know pretty well and put in what we call the heartbreak part of the Hanoi Hilton. And I was in a cell that was not much bigger than that table right there on both sides. And threw it in and threw it in there, and the only thing that happened was I was fed twice a day with stuff that you wouldn't eat. And just trying to get a grip on the fact that I was there. That was one of the hardest things that you had to do. I am there. I'm not going to wake up from this bad dream and be back at Top Lead. I'm not going to wake up and be with Ray and the kids, my late wife. I am here, so get a handle on it. And I stayed in that cell for about maybe a month. I'm not exactly sure. And then I moved into another part of the Hoa Lo prison, the Hanoi Hilton. They had several areas of that thing. And I moved into a cell that had 2 other guys in it, and that cell was maybe twice that size. It had two bunks on either side, and it was about this much between those wooden bunks. And the cell we figured was about 7 feet deep, so 4 times 7 is 28 square feet was your operating area for 24 hours a day. And the bathroom accommodations were luxurious. You had one bucket about like this. Sometimes you had a top on it. And that was for 24 hours for 2 of you. Now run that one through your computer. That was not a lot of fun. It took a lot of discipline to get through 24 hours of every day in those kind of confines. And I stayed there from about middle of November, maybe first part of December, until July of '68. And then they moved us and several other guys from different parts of the prison, moved us outside of Hanoi, about 30 miles, to a camp called Santay, S-O-N-T-A-Y. And I see somebody in here nodding their head. If you know anything about the Vietnam War, in 1970, in November the 21st, in fact, of 1970, there was a raid on Santay. And we had been in that camp, we that had been moved out there in the summer of '68, we had been there for about 2 years, about 56, 57, and varied those numbers did. And then they moved us in the summer of 1970 down to another camp about 15 clicks down the road that we call Camp Faith. And it was a much better place than Santay was. Santay was a hellhole. There was always some torture, pressure on you to write a statement that they're treating me good and that the food is bad, which was bovine scatology. It just was not the case. And then they moved us. And that occurred after Ho Chi Minh died in '69, late '69. The whole paradigm for POWs changed. And so we were down at Camp Faith, and things were looking better. They were treating us better. They were letting us outside for probably a couple of hours each day. Big, big, big deal. Food got a little bit better, you know, better sewer greens, better rotten pumpkin soup. But we didn't get what we had today. But, and then, and this is one of the most important things history-wise in our whole state, not just my state, but all the POW state in North Vietnam. On the night of November the 21st, 1970, the camp on Santay was raided by special forces. And I could spend 45 minutes telling you that story because it is truly one of the more amazing stories of the Vietnam War, or of any war, how that happened. The unfortunate part about it, we were not there. We had been moved about 2 months before that. So we're down at this camp, and on the night of November the 21st, all of a sudden a SAM went off right outside of our camp. And this was chaos and this is like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and we're going, what in the world is going on? And there was a lot of shooting, and you could hear airplanes flying over, and you got to know that the time that passes, you can't get your hands around. But this was over 2.5 years we had not heard an airplane. Stopped the bombing. Johnson had stopped the bombing in '68. So the next morning we got up, and when we got out of our cells to empty the buckets and, you know, go get a wash perhaps or get the food in, the camp commander was wandering around out there. He didn't speak any English, so at least he said he didn't, but through an interpreter we asked him what happened. And he said the Americans have started the bombing on North Vietnam again. Well, that was not true. There had been a rescue attempt by special forces on that night on Santay, but we were not there. We didn't find out until about another 4 months exactly what had happened. I would encourage some of you guys that like to read about this stuff. There's a couple of books that's been written on that. One is called The Raid by Ben Shimmer, and that is a very good, accurate account of the planning, etc., that went into the Santay raid. The other one that just came out about a year ago was called Who Will Go? Who Will Go? And I can't remember that kid's name, but he was the youngest raider of the Sante Raiders. He was 19 years old. That was on that radio. Let me give you just a brief description of that, and then we'll go on, so I don't keep you guys for the next. Oh no. but at any rate, that camp at Sante, even though we weren't there, they still had some indications that there were POWs there. So this planning went on for about 7 or 8 months to put a force together that could go from Thailand 450 miles north at night to a prison camp that was 30 miles northwest of Hanoi. Not friendly area. We had never refueled helicopters to enable them to make that trip 450 miles up there, 450 miles back, hopefully with 50-something POWs on it. They had to have air support. And this thing was planned for like 5 months in advance. And back in the States, and they practiced this continually down at Eglin Air Force Base in Florida, at a site there. They had a mock-up of the Sante camp. It was about 200 feet by 200 feet, and the buildings went in it. You had buildings down one side and then a gate, and you had buildings over here. This was Beer Hall 1, Beer Hall 2, the Opium Den, and then you go across to the other side, and it was a cat house. That's the GIs, you know, it's going to be a cat house. And when they took those helicopters north, they refueled them, and they went 400 miles north. You had 3 H-53s, and you guys know what that is. That's a big one. I think you see them, a version of that down in Meridian when you go by. And they had one CH-3, which was a smaller one, that had the assault force in that would get 8 people inside the compounds and neutralize that. And that was led by a guy named Dick Metters. But the reason I'm telling you this quick story is that Blue Boy 1, that CH-3, in this little square compound, Beer Hall 1 was where I had lived for 2 years. And that's exactly where that helicopter crashed, right outside my door. Didn't hurt a soul. They got in, and there was some Vietnamese that were in there, and they neutralized those pretty quick. And they landed the others right outside the H-53s. It had, you add them all up, and it was about 50 Raiders, commanded by a guy named Colonel Bull Simons, a legendary Special Forces guy that had done a lot of that kind of stuff. And they actually, one of those with old Bull in it, landed next to a school, they thought, but it turned out it was a lot of Chi-Coms in there, and they killed several of them. And then they moved it around and got everything back to get us out. Finally, when they realized that nobody there, they got all the Raiders and put them on anything, but it was amazing. But listen to those Raiders tell how they did that, how they got inside that compound, and the fact that they didn't find anybody. And the code word was items. We were items. And they would say negative items, negative items. And going back on those helicopters all the way back to Thailand was just absolutely unbelievable. I can't imagine what those guys must have felt. And when they got back and landed, those hard men that would kill you in 40 different ways before you even thought about it, they said they had tears in their eyes. They cried. Because they'd made that and executed that plan perfectly, but we weren't there. But it cost us, that had been there, it cost us 3.5 years. Because it was 3.5 years before we got around to getting out of it. But because of that raid, and this is the whole point of my rambling talk to you today. By the way, I really thought for a long time how I should structure this, and I said, screw it. I'm just going to tell this story in my words, and you can either like it or not. But at any rate, the most important thing of that Sante raid was the fact that we were, like I said, about 15, 20 clicks down the road, and there were 4 or 5 other camps outside that had, of Hanoi that had 50 people in them also. But because of that raid, they moved everybody in to the Hilton, to an area that we never knew was there. And it had 7 big cells that you could put about 50 people each in. And we call that Camp Unity. And we got all of the senior guys there who had never been all together. And there's a chain of command always in POW situation. It's called the SRO, Senior Ranking Officer. And who it was, that was the man. Where we had Stockdale, Denton, John Flynn, Robbie Reisner, and those guys all together in one area in that thing. The V didn't think that they had any common with us, but we got common with them instantly. And the 4th Allied POW wing was formed. That's this patch right here. You might ask yourself the question, why is it the 4th Allied POW wing? Well, we had ties. There were 4 ties that were part of us that had been Special Forces guys that had gone on a raid somewhere. There was one Vietnamese named Nguyen Quang Dot. Guess what we called it? Max. And he had been an A1 pilot that had, in 1965, had been in South Vietnam and got lost, wound up flying up over the southern part of North Vietnam and ran out of gas and got captured. And he was within our group forever. A quick aside, now probably, is that the 25-minute deal? I told her to wave at me when I got to 25 minutes. But Max came back to the United States. He was released with us, married a Vietnamese lady, had 3 children. Every one of those kids went to academies. And every one of those kids, 2 out of the 3 finished tops. The other one was in like the top 5. They're amazing, amazing people. Well, at any rate, this was formed. We were in big cells. Our life changed. We organized ourselves within those cells. The living was easier. It was not torture. We had classes. You've all probably read that. We had classes, and we taught classes in math all the way to differential equations. And I know what differential equations. But I mean, we had some really brilliant people in there. We taught Spanish, French, even some Russian. I could have gotten a credit in college for Spanish. I was fairly fluent. Probably had some mistakes in it. But if you've noted, listen to me, I make some mistakes. So, but it just changed our lives. We moved, while we were there though, is when in May of '72, we were still in cell 3 in Unity, right here. When we hadn't heard an airplane in a year and a half. And all of a sudden, one day, pretty day, it was hot, it was in the middle of the summer, we hear coming from the south, and we kind of knew where the south was. Wow! Boom, 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 boom. I said, shit, an airplane just flew over. Wonder what, nobody saw it, they heard it. And we kind of looking around, everybody standing up and looking out, and then in just a very few minutes, same deal coming from the north. Same thing, whoa, and you know, they were so far behind. And we looked up, and this kid, I didn't see it, but this kid right next to me named Jim Ray, X-ray, Texas A&M guy, 105, lieutenant that gotten shot down on his first mission. He said, he just did a roll. That was John Chandler. And I found out about that in 1986. What that experience did was made each and every one of us appreciate what this country is about. I made a very conscious decision somewhere through there, and I can't pinpoint it where it was, that I was never going to stand on the sidelines again when I could be involved in my country in any way, be it at a local level, be it at a state level, or be it at a national level. And I think I did that. When I got out of the Air Force, got out of the jail and decided I would go to Columbus Air Force Base, I figured if I had anything to offer, it would be in the training command. And I had a great time. John and Brian both had been with us with the 50th and those kids out there. I didn't realize at the time what was going on, but I was just doing everything I could to conform to the training command ideology, and it's a little bit different than the tactical group. But it made me appreciate what I had gone through and what I had learned about what this country is. And I had a great time with the 50s. And when I got out, I continued to serve. I very fortunately got that airport job at Columbus. Had a lot of options at other larger airports, and I just stayed there. I got a little option to run for office, and I said, I ain't doing that. In fact, on the Congress, I was urged to run for Congress against David Bowen one time. And I says, back then they paid a congressman, I think it was $60,000 a year. But I would have to give up my military retirement. They changed that not too long after that. I said, I can't live on that. I said, well, you know, there's other ways you can do things. I said, no, I'm not going to do that either. So I never did it. But the lessons learned from Vietnam was about what America is. Don't let it get away from us, folks. We are in trouble in this country right now. I probably have some different views. That's okay. That's my view. We are in trouble in this country. Hopefully we'll get it turned around. I want to close my ramblings, if I can get my iPhone, iPad is one of my granddaughters. Hey, I want to read you something that I mentioned earlier about. I mentioned earlier about the flag and what it means to me. I ran across about somebody from Clemson in here. That's you, and you. Okay. One of the guys that worked for me at the 50th, and you know, he was an old man guy. He didn't get shot out, so he had those 5 years that I didn't. But he sent me this the other day, and it was a speech that this guy named Van Morris did, and it was called Old Glory. And it's about our flag. And I can't read this thing without getting so choked up that I sometimes don't finish it. It's just unbelievable. Let me share this with you. I would like for you to know that I believe that if our flag could speak these words, this is what it would say. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Old Glory. I am the flag of the United States of America. My name is Old Glory. I fly on the top of the world's tallest buildings and stand watch in America's halls of justice. I fly majestically across the great institutions of learning, and I stand guard with the greatest military power in the world. Look up and see me. I stand for peace. I stand for truth, for honor and justice. I stand for freedom. I am confident that I am brave, I am proud, and I am ready. I am flown with my fellow banners. When I'm flown with my fellow banners, my head is held just a little bit higher, and my arms a little truer. Except for my God, I bow to no one. I am recognized all over the world. I am sovereign, I am saluted, I am respected, I am honored, I am loved, and yet I am feared. I have fought in every battle of every war for more than 200 years. Some of these battles include Gettysburg, Shiloh, Appomattox, San Juan Hill, the churches of France, the Argonne Forest, Anzio, Rome, the beaches of Normandy, Afghanistan, Kuwait, Korea, Quezon, Saigon, Syria, and scores of other places, long forgotten by all. Except those that were there with me, I know, because I was there. I led my special operation forces in the quiet of the night at the tip of the spear. I saw them fight fearlessly throughout the globe. Every day of the year, I watch over them, even through the casualties of Desert One, and they still love me. I was on a small hill I mentioned earlier, Iwo Jima, Mount Suribachi. I was dirty and battle-worn, but my soldiers, my sailors, my airmen, my Coast Guard, and my Marines, and my POWs who were in the cells of North Vietnam, they all cheered me, and I was very proud. I was at Ground Zero in New York City on September the 11th as cowardly fanatics attacked America. I was raised from the ashes of once proud buildings by brave firefighters. Can you guys imagine that? I can't. I can't imagine the courage it must have taken those people to go up through that tower, knowing what they were about to do. I was raised from the ashes of a once proud building by these brave firefighters. These were heroes who risked their lives to save others, showing all of America, although bloody, we will never be beaten because those who destroy us cannot win. I am a symbol of freedom, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I have been soiled, I have been burned, I have been torn, and I have been trampled on in the streets of my own country. But when it is done by those who I have served with in battle, it hurts. But hear me today when I say I will overcome, because I am strong. I have slipped the surly bonds of earth, held a vantage point on the moon, then over the uncharted new frontiers of space. I have been that silent witness to all of America's finest hours, but my finest hour comes when my stripes are torn into strips to be used as bandages to cover the wounds of my fellow comrades on the field of battle. Also, when I fly at half-mast to honor my soldiers, my sailors, my airmen, my Coast Guardsmen, and my Marines, but most importantly, when I am placed in the trembling arms of a grieving mother at the graveside of a falling son or daughter. I am so very proud. My name is Old Glory. Long may I wave, dear God. Long may I wave.
Okay, we have a picture that we have just unveiled of what Lieutenant Colonel Gene Smith and John Chancellor described. They have an artist from Nashville that painted this picture. The original picture is at the Columbus Air Force Base. that honors Lieutenant Colonel Gene Smith. And this is the one of 10 prints that were signed by both people. And as we know, John Chancellor's not with us anymore, so there won't be any more. But I purchased this picture and got it framed and donated it to the museum.
Bless you.
The only way I know about it is Jesse, my son, was at the unveiling over at Brian and John Pearson's camp house over in Mississippi, and Jesse told me the story one day, and I just cried and cried. And he said that was when that plane flew over was the first time they had hope, that he had been there 3.5 years with no hope. And it was there another 2 years as he went through the story and told us, but they knew he was there. And so he had hope. And so that's what this picture says to me. It's never give up hope. So thank you so much.
Annie, thank you so much for donating that to the museum. It's going to be in a place of honor in the museum's lobby, and we'll place it there tomorrow morning. So thank you so much, and thank you for the wonderful program today. It was inspiring, and we're so proud of as you're here today. Brandon, if you'd bring forward the items from the Heritage family. And Ms. Heritage, did you want to join us up here? Everett, would you come back too, please? I wonder if you'd please tell us about these items and share with us.
My brother-in-law, Willard Heritage, who is the brother of my first husband. Today, we are presenting his medals that I received 2 years after he passed away. 50-something years, he did not know he was supposed to have them. And so just before he passed away, I was informed that he should have gotten them. So he applied for them. He said, I'll never see them though, and he didn't. But so I got them 2 years after he died 25 years ago, this coming December. And so I have kept them. And after I married Mr. Tilley, his brother Willard wanted to keep them, and we have decided that it's time to put them in the museum. He's already in the museum, and his World War II dress jacket and some pictures and things are already in the museum, but we wanted to preserve his medals that he received. He was a prisoner of war for a short time by the Germans. He managed to escape, but he never escaped, really. His body did, but he was still there for the 50-something years after he came home from the war. But today I'm presenting them and just so proud to have them here in the museum, and also the flag that was used at his funeral service. I wanted to put that with his place here in the museum. So thank you so much for letting us do this. And remember, his name was David O. Heritage, and he spent 3 years. He was drafted into the Army before his 19th birthday, and he fought in Europe for 3 years and came home, got off the bus, walked home, no parades, nothing, but that was the great generation. That was the great generation. And thank you so much. Thank y'all.
What a wonderful gift for the museum. Well, that'll be another place of honor in the American Military Room right behind us over here. Thank you all again for coming today. It's been a wonderful program, a great celebration of our country and recognition of our veterans. And I just look forward to what we can come up with for the same time next year. Thank you all again.